Welcome back, everybody, to True Talk with TruMotion, where a couple of guys talk about how to make the world a better place and hopefully make your day a little bit better in the process. My name is Mark, followed by my co-host, Steven. Let's get things kicked off. We have a special guest in the studio today. We have Master Tyler Martin with us. He has been, he's one of the founding members and CEO of TruMotion Martial Arts, and I've known this man for almost 20 years now, and I figured if anybody's got some good stories to tell, this is the guy to talk to. So, Master Martin, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
So first off, let's just go right from the beginning in terms of how did you get signed up and started training in the martial arts?
My uncle, Russell Clegg, he was a instructor for Fred Villari Studios of Self-Defense. He ran the Taylorsville location, and at the time, my family and I were living in West Valley. And he signed up my mom, and then he signed, so my mom started training probably in 1986. And then a year later, my mom signed the three of us up, me and my brother, my sister. And we started training in Sandy because my uncle wouldn't have us in the dojo. He felt that it was going to harm his image. So we had to drive all the way to Sandy. And so my first instructor technically wasn't my uncle. It was a guy named Kevin Ferguson out in the Sandy dojo.
Okay. Yeah, that was back in the day when the pecking order of importance was in the students' eyes. It was, what was it, God and then Sensei.
That got confused sometimes, but yeah, it was pretty much that was the way it was.
Yes. So when you said you started training with your family, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did the rest of your family keep training?
So my mom trained until probably 91. She got up to advanced green, so she probably trained 4 years. My brother and my sister trained to orange belts, so they probably trained 4 or 5 months. It wasn't for them at the time. My brother really liked basketball. My sister really wasn't physically active, so she didn't enjoy it.
Really? So Wade was into basketball?
He was, yeah.
I do. Okay, Wade, if you ever listen to this, I never really saw you as a basketball player.
He's not built like a basketball player.
No, he is not.
He was built back then kind of like a potato. Now he's like a long distance runner, but back then he was built like a potato.
Wow, I cannot picture Wade playing basketball. That's crazy.
Yeah, he was all into it. We used to wake up at 5 a.m. and there was a church that was close to our house. We used to wake up at 5 a.m., I think 3 days a week, and go up and play basketball for a couple hours with a bunch of old dudes.
Church, and for those of you guys that are not from Utah, if you ever have the ability to play what's called church ball, just don't. Not unless you want to go into the hospital.
It's full contact.
Yes, it is. If you're not bleeding or you don't leave with something twisted or broken, it really wasn't a church ball session.
Yeah, I've done martial arts now for, I don't even know, 35, 38 years, something like that. I've gotten one tooth knocked out in martial arts and one tooth knocked out in church ball.
I was going to say, what's more physical, martial arts or church ball?
It's gray. That's a tough question because you have to look and, you look at the church ball, and if you get an older guy, maybe like 50 or older, and he's played high school basketball, that guy is out there hurting people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's got to show him that he's still got it.
Yeah. So you're looking to play ball with like chubby kids.
Oh, jeez. Okay. So now that being said, when you were training back in the 80s and 90s, we had Dave Linton on the show a couple of weeks ago. Do you have any funny Dave Linton stories that he may not have divulged at the time?
You know what? Dave is just a great character. I mean, talk about a high character person, but he is a character. Back in the day, Dave is just a physical freak of nature too. So you have to realize that he just does things that maybe aren't normal for normal people. So we'd go on these retreats up in the mountains, and he used to do this thing where he'd walk up to a tree, and there was a tree limb kind of hanging over the trail. And the tree limb is like, I don't know, 8 or 9 inches in diameter. And he'd put his hands up on it, and it was right above his head. And then he would do a pull up, but jump up and land standing on this tree limb. It was the craziest thing ever. So if you watch, so he was like a ferret. I mean, it was crazy.
Because that's like a muscle up, but I've never heard of people like being able to stand on it afterwards.
Oh, he would
That's
like
wild.
he would jump. He would throw himself up and like land standing on it. It was a physical. It was
That
pretty
is
impressive.
that is way impressive.
Yeah.
Because I don't think. I mean, he could probably still do it now, knowing him. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. He is a freak of nature. He's like what, in his mid 60s now.
He's 65, I think, next week. So
Yeah,
he
and
turns
he still
65 next
just-
week. Yeah, and he
Still
probably
takes it to everybody.
exactly.
Still takes it to everybody. It's kind of, well, I mean, I remember you telling us a story that with the old regime, all those old masters hated working out with him because he would just whoop the crap out of everybody.
Yeah, so in 2010, United Studios had a split, and a lot of the old regime, the board of directors, they all went to the Ultimate Self-Defense Studios. And these guys grew up with Dave Linton right above them in rank. So they grew up under, Dave Linton is his physical prowess in his 30s and 40s, even his late 20s. So he was just beating the crap out of them. So when they found out that I was going to have Dave come back around our team, they thought it was funny, and they're like, "Oh, Dave's going to blast out all the students and blast out all the instructors," because he was kind of known for that. He would just find things funny, and he back then he didn't really take anything too serious. So it made hanging out with him fun. It made working out with him hell.
Yeah. Yes. No, so we talked about, you briefly just touched on the 2010 split.
Yeah.
That was kind of a big deal, or at least in my opinion, I thought it was a big deal because for the previous, I can't remember how many years, like that board of directors was like, man, they seemed really good. They knew what they were talking about. They were knowledgeable. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, we get this meeting where it's like, hey, we're rebranding. And me, as a young instructor at the time, I was confused as hell. And like, what do you mean we're rebranding? What's going on? What were some of the main factors for you personally that made you stay with United Studios at that time? Because I know for you, I was like, God, dude, it seems like a lot of your good pals and your friends were like going the Z Ultimate route. And then when you stayed, I was all like, damn, if he's staying, there must be a good reason, because that in my opinion, that took a lot of like courage to be like, hey, dude, you guys are going that way. I just can't follow.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you back up just a couple years before that, maybe 2007, 2006, I started becoming a little bit more successful and making money in the martial arts industry and running schools. And I was developing these friendships, and these guys, most or all of them went to the Z Ultimate dojo, or the Z Ultimate business. And the Z Ultimate guys were about 90% right. And 90% right meaning they were trying to get organized, they were trying to create syllabus, they were trying to create a structure and standardization and training scenarios. But the 10% they got wrong is instead of kind of liberating people that wanted to grow and providing them an opportunity, it was more of like a contractual enslavement. I mean, that's probably not the right word, but they were trying to put people in a position where they would grow, but they would own everything. Like the guys at the top would own everything, and then you would push and grow. For instance, at the time in 2010, I owned one school 100%. Then I had these management contracts to manage these other schools and get profit out of them. So anytime the school made profit, I would get either 15 or 25% of the profit. The problem is I didn't control, and I didn't even have a say in what was put on the overhead. Then what was put on the overhead, there was no checks and balances to it. So if you had a school, say, that made $18,000 in revenue that month, and their typical overhead for a month was maybe $45,000 to $6,000 a month. So you're looking at it like, wow, that's $12,000 in profit. This looks like a fantastic month. So you're going to experience, $12,000 profit. You're going to think, oh, I'm going to make $3,000 this month off this school. And then you'd see the overhead come through, and you'd have a $2,700 office expense that nobody could justify. You'd have a $3,500 advertisement expense. And at the time, there's 14 schools in the state of Utah. So if that's advertising expense spread out over 14 schools, now you're saying, okay, there's a $50,000 or $45,000 advertising expense this month. Where?
Yeah.
And nobody could answer that.
I remember those days where all of a sudden you look at your overhead and you're like, what is this?
Yeah. So
we're like, oh, that's a good question. We'll get back to you on that. Like, well, what do you mean you'll get back to me on that?
Yeah. So setting up a structure and like a syllabus and like creating training was very attractive to me. But the part that they fell through on was just, some more of the business character issues. And
no, I agree,
things.
because looking back on it now, since we've obviously broken away from United Studios,
yeah,
I agree with you. I think those guys had something going for them with the whole, like, the structure, the syllabus, the standardizations, all that stuff. It's like, okay, looking back on it, it's like they really did have something going for them. But I kind of agree with you. It's that 10% that you're just like, well, what's the difference between staying and what you're trying to do? It's the same thing.
Yeah, so going to United Studios or staying with United Studios in 2010 wasn't so much what I knew United Studios was offering. I knew it wasn't what Z Ultimate was offering. United Studios was still offering ownership. I had no idea at that time what kind of what kind of character issues and character flaws the higher ups at United Studios had. So, but I did know the problems I had with Z Ultimate. So the weekend before the split, there was a Seattle tournament, and I basically had told the board of directors at that time, hey, I'm not going to go on board with you guys. And they're like, well, make us an offer, like write up what you want. And I said, okay, I'll write up what I want. So I kind of wrote that I wanted an opportunity, and this is funny, I wanted an opportunity to own another location after I took 3 locations to a $10,000 a month profit margin. Then I wanted an opportunity to buy another location 100%. I also wanted to kind of identify the things that were allowed to be put on an overhead, on the overhead of a dojo. So if something was going to be put on the overhead of a dojo, it had to have a receipt, it had to have an invoice, mm-hmm. It had to be justified through the parties. And there was like, not that I would have a say, but they would have to show where it was paid.
You mean actually trying to run a legit business?
Exactly. So you can't just like swipe the profit out of people. So, and then I was laughed at. They laughed me out of the room.
Really?
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, at first they kind of got aggressive and like, no, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, no, that's the problem. You guys don't know what you're talking about. If I ask, where's this advertising expense, and you can't answer that, you don't know what's on your overhead. Yeah. And then they basically laughed and said no. My uncle was the one that was like, that's never going to happen. Yeah. And then, 2 years later, he's out of the karate business.
No, that is true. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you talk about stuff like that, where it's like, hey, if you're going to spend money and put it on your overhead of the business, like, we need receipts and we need reasons why. Like, any other company or business in the world, that's a reasonable request.
Seems a little reasonable.
But yet the karate business, not so much.
Yeah, the karate business is a crazy business, man.
Yeah. No, before we started talking, we were like, man, if we could compile all of the stories from everybody we've dealt with, we would have 10 seasons worth that would put Cobra Kai to shame.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Some of the stuff that Cobra Kai puts out there, I'm like, oh, this is lame. Yeah. I could top that. Yeah, I could top that with a real story with real names, places, dates.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I mean, so, cause to be honest with you, I remember that first meeting, like right after the split, when we met up in Riverton. It was me, you, Dave, Jesse, and I think Eric Boring and Nancy.
I don't remember Nancy and Eric being there. I thought it was just me. No, Nancy and Eric basically said, hey, whatever you decide, we're in.
So I remember the 4 of us were there.
And I don't think Eric was there because Eric worked for Russ in West Jordan. And Eric was scared of showing up. And he was scared of talking to me because they told him, don't talk to Tyler. Mm. And then he came into the dojo one night after he called me up and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? I was like, yeah, of course, man. And I taught this kid since he was 5. So I'm like, yeah, come on by. So he came by and he started crying. I was like, what's the deal? And he's like, oh, I'm just not happy. I'm like, look, if you come back on board, I'll open up another location for you. And then he put in his 2-week notice, and then they basically told him to get his shit and get out.
Yeah. No, because that was a weird meeting when we sat in there and we're like, okay, are we doing this? Are we staying? Because we basically have to, like, you know, for lack of a better term, you like, you know, round the wagons up and like, let's create a barrier because they're going to be gunning for us, because that's just kind of how things worked back in the day. It's like you tried to not kill them with facts and like outwork them. They tried to find anything they could use against you and like plaster it everywhere.
Yeah, so they were plastering the Z. So the Z was coming at us, plastering stuff online. And then I was trying to circle the wagons because I knew that at that point, if you guys were on board and I was on board, we would have leverage against CM, you know, the leader of United Studios.
Yeah.
And I knew that we'd be able to negotiate better scenarios as far as like what they deemed to be corporate domain.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, over time, and I'm not really sure how much time it took, but he was able to chip away at our wagons and infiltrate and kind of separate us out. And that was probably, he thought it would be advantageous for him, of course, but in the long run, it just, you know, everybody that was involved in that is now gone from United Studios.
No, that's very true. Because I remember you and Dave Garvey were super tight. Like, you guys did, like, you talked all the time, you hung out, you did stuff. And then, like, when the split happened, that started happening that way. But then, oh man, it almost seems like within about a couple years, it's like CM drove a wedge between the two of you and made everything a competition in a bad way.
Yeah, he made Dave feel like I was going to push Dave out of business, which was never the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know, you can't operate business, at least on a small scale, of thinking, well, I'm going to be in business to put this other person out of business. There's just no way to win in that mindset. Now, of course, if you were scaling up and becoming a monster, say like UPS or FedEx, they probably do things and make moves to try to hurt the other business because that's their only competition.
Yeah.
But on such a small scale, as a small business owner, you can't afford to sign leases and put employees in place to try to hurt another business. You're simply just trying to survive.
Exactly.
And, you know, Dave's a great guy, but he was a little bit easily controlled. And I think some people had his ear that weren't really either smart or not really looking out for his best interest.
Well, the truth of the matter is like, I remember that because I was on Dave's team for a long time before we really started to connect. And yeah, he would just say things and they would do things and I would be like, this seems off. Like, I don't understand. And then the second that we started talking more often, I was like, okay, I can honestly say you're the only one that's been telling me the truth since day one.
Really?
I swear to God. It's like, ever since we really started kind of getting into business together and like working out together and doing everything together, I was like, he's the only one that's been honest with me the entire time. You know, everybody else is just kind of giving you fluff pieces and telling you what you want to hear and this and that. And I don't regret any of the time that I had with Dave and his team and all that stuff. I mean, because I learned a lot what to do, learned a lot what not to do. But at the same time, there was always this, like, I never really felt like I was getting the whole truth. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to be associated with people that just kind of sugarcoat everything and tell you you're great, even though you know you got, you know, stuff to work on? Or are you going to work with people that are like, hey, you're doing great, but like, hey, we need to fix some things? And, you know, unfortunately, I think a lot of newer generation of instructors or just people in general, they want that sugar-coated, like, oh, you're fantastic, you do no wrong. But then they look at what they're building and it's nothing to be proud about.
No, I agree 100%. And, you know, in the long run, you know, if you're not going to operate in an honest space, like with integrity, eventually everyone's going to see through you. And then you're going to be in a position where you have to go find another career because, you know, the bullshit gets out of the bag.
It's super true. Yeah. I completely agree, because you can only you can only bullshit somebody for so long before they're like, okay, like, you either need to show it, like, you know, like, put up or shut up.
And if they're around you long enough, I mean, eventually, if they're smart people and you want to surround yourself with smart people, you want them to actually see that you're real.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're depending on these people to go to battle with you, and small business is battle. I mean, are we battling like the heroes that we have in the armed forces? No, but we're battling in a small business space that's, we're not risking physical injury, but we're risking like mental and emotional damage. And
Absolutely.
nobody understands small business and how,
Well, right
if
now,
you rounded up everybody that has sleep deprivation, I would say 90% of them are small business owners.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because let's not even get on the sleeping topic.
Oh,
but
gosh.
no, I feel like small business is under attack right now. It's very difficult to operate as a small business.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a correction, I think, in the market that's happening because when COVID happened, it really just slammed the large box stores. And, everyone went to online, and now you walk into a large box store and they're closing right and left. The JCPenney's, the Sears, these things are just closing down. And when that happens, it's opening up all this commercial space. So it's lowering the leverage that landlords have on these small businesses that need like a 2,000 square foot space. So because they have to cut up these box stores. And before the landlords were, 10 years ago, signing a lease, the landlord would get you, just on crazy. In Jordan Landing, they $36 a foot, and then they wanted a percentage of your revenue, right?
Really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, so that's a normal thing now that you almost have to negotiate out. And well, at least the last lease I signed was probably 4 years ago, but I had to negotiate that out of the lease.
Yeah.
And they're like they were holding steady, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to sign a lease like that." And now the same space you were looking at 10 years ago that was $36 a foot is now 28.
Okay.
And so that's a major correction. And I think what's happened is when you, I think there's a couple safe places to be. And one safe place is if you're an employee and you jump into a career, say at Home Depot, and you're, middle management, upper management, lower management, and say you get $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, you get a W-2, you get 3 weeks off, you get medical insurance. That's a good place to be. I don't think that's a bad place. Like I lived in that space for almost 10 years and I enjoyed it. It was like very comfortable. And then I think you get into small business, and then, everybody in America, that there's this hope or this idea that it's possible that you're going to jump into another bracket. You're going to jump from middle income to upper income, or from lower income to middle income. And that opportunity and that vehicle is small business. And so these small business people are getting into business, they're operating businesses, and then they're jumping these categories. And I think the landlords were like, hey, we're going to experience this a little bit more. So they just start hammering the hell out of everybody on their leases. And I think they've gotten a little fat, and now it's time that commercial property in Utah at least is dropping. And so, it's time to shave a little fat off the steak and put people back in a position where in America or Utah, they can still, that opportunity, that rocket ship to get to that next level is small business. You're not going to go from lower income to upper income through Home Depot employment, or not Home Depot. Home Depot is a wonderful place, but
working for someone else.
Yeah, working for someone else. You're going to have to actually take the plunge, open up a business, and then just work your guts out for 15 years. And the shortcut is 15 years.
This is true.
And everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to take a shortcut. I'm going to do a startup business." I have a friend. I know a guy that's 2 years. He's a multimillionaire, and it's like for every one of those people I know, there's another 1,000 of them that tried that still live in mama's basement.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking about when you lived in that space of like operating a quote unquote normal job, when did you take the plunge and become a full-time instructor?
Okay, so right around 99, 98, 99, I was working in the West Jordan dojo, and I was teaching like the kids class on Saturday and helping with classes. I was in the academy. And then and at that time I was working at Albertsons.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was a produce manager for Albertsons, and I was in the they called it like the division office trainee. So I was the trainee. They used to call me the golden boy, but I just worked really hard. Yeah. I really like work. I mean, it's just it's a mental problem. Well, I really love working. Like if you said, "Hey, let's grab these shovels and dig a ditch," I'd be like, "I'm in." Cool. Where's the gloves?
And that's why you're successful, because nobody nowadays want to work.
Yeah. So I was working at Albertsons, super happy. I was having a great time. I worked at the American Fork produce department. I was making, between 50 and 60 grand a year. This is back in 2000. And then they moved me up to 9th East, which is like the division office store. The division office is like 1 block away. So the division office people are in that store all the time. And I like those guys. I mean, those guys were always nice to me. They'd take me to lunch. They'd buy me Pepsis. I mean, they were always nice. Hey, Tyler, how's it going? Hey, what's up, Golden Boy? And I'm like, hey, how's it going? Good morning. And no one ever messed with me. And they asked me to go to that store. And I said, look, it's just too close for you guys. I don't want to be that close to you guys. And they're like, really? And this is like... and most of these guys actually are running Fly and J now. But anyway, these guys are on the phone with me. The VP's on the phone. The produce division office manager's on the phone. They got me on a 3-way call. And I'm like, I don't really want to be that close to you. And they're like, well, you don't like us? And I said, I like you guys. But I said, you understand when you come in the store, you stress everybody out.
Yeah.
And then I have to work with the stressed out store director. And the stressed out store director is like, shit rolls downhill. So they're over there trying to stress me out. And I just don't play those games. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a good job. If they want to fire me, fire me. I don't care.
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to replace me, so I don't care. And I never had problems with them. So I said, I don't want to be that close because you stress everybody out. And so they moved me up to that store. We closed that store by Gart Sports Castle.
Okay, yeah.
The old Murray Dojo.
Yeah.
And we opened up right across the street. And in the first quarter, we killed it. And Albertsons has you sign this like minimum. When you go to open up a new store, they give you a minimum bonus. And so it's like your average of your last 3 bonuses. And you could bonus up to 2% of the store profit. But you couldn't exceed what your wages produced for that period of time. So it's a quarterly bonus. So if in one quarter, let's say you made $10,000 in wages, your bonus couldn't exceed that. So you'd have like a little bit of a minimum, which was 2% of the profit, and then the maximum would be it'd be calling like max out bonus.
Gotcha.
So double your income. And so the first quarter they expected us to get killed, and we didn't. We made $591,000. So we should have maxed. And so I was like pumped about maxing. And at the time I lived in West Jordan, I needed a vinyl fence. I had 2 dogs, and I had like planned to spend $6,000 or $7,000 on this vinyl fence. And I was like, this is great. And then they just kept jerking us around. And I told my boss, I'm like, dude, you guys jerk us around on this bonus. I'm gone. And they're like, no way. Come on. No way.
Well, that's a lot
You're
of money.
the golden boy. Oh, I needed it too. And like, I needed that money big time. And so anyway, we ended up getting jerked around. I got my minimum, which was like $3,500. I'm like, this doesn't cut it. So I said, I put in my 2-week notice. I talked to my buddy's friend. I talked to my buddy. His wife was a store director at Walmart. She's like, we'll take you in a second, Tyler. And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. And a couple of my friends had gone to Walmart. So she said, hey, we'll give you 50 grand a year. We'll give you, I think 3 weeks vacation or 2 weeks vacation, medical, all that stuff. And I was like, okay, great. So I told my boss at Albertsons, I'm like, hey, I'm out of here. And he's like, no way. And so he's like, I'll be out in front of your store in 2 minutes. Be outside.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So I walked outside and he pulled up and I got in his car. We drove to the edge of the parking lot. He's like, what can we do? What's going on? I'm like, you guys screwed me on the bonus. You know that. And he goes, I'm not going to admit or deny that. He goes, what can we do?
Give me my bonus.
I tell you what you can do. You can call Dole and you can tell him you'll put him on the front of the ad, but you need a check right now for $6 grand. Tyler, I can't do that. I said, you sure as hell can. I said, I was in charge of the golf tournament. We had a produce golf tournament. And I said, I called these guys and they gave me cash. They gave me envelopes of cash. I'm like, so I know that you can call them right now and just ask them for a favor and they'll give you envelopes of cash. You give me that cash, I'll stay on. Don't screw me again. We can't do that. We can't do that. And I said, okay, I'm out of here. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go work at Walmart. I don't know. And so I told my uncle, my uncle was running United Studios at the time here in Utah. And he said, have you ever thought about teaching karate? And I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. I'm like, I got vacation. I got like medical insurance. I'm making 60 grand a year. Like hell no, man.
I'm sitting large.
I see karate instructors sleeping in the dojo. I'm not doing that. So he's like, why don't you try it? And I'm like, no. And he goes, try it for 6 months. I said, really? And he goes, yeah, Walmart will always be there. And I said, okay. So I called Jessica, was her name, at Walmart. And I said, hey, can you guys hold on to this contract for 6 months? And she's like, sure. She's like, whatever you want. She's like, absolutely. She's like, you're the division office trainee for Albertsons. She's like, we'll take you in a second. And I'm like, okay. So then I went to my uncle. I said, all right, cool. And he's like, all right, let's do it. He put me in Taylorsville. And in the first week, I made $5,600. And after 1 week, I was like, how do I buy this place?
Yeah. No, okay, so to put that in perspective, back in like 99, 2000, the average dojo a week was making like what, $500 to $1,000?
If you made $1,000 a week, you were off limits. Like nobody would mess with you.
Yeah.
No one would even punch you hard at the workouts.
So the fact that you literally quadrupled the average dojo income for a week in your first week, that's very impressive.
I was running scared, man.
Yeah.
I was hungry. I had a house payment. I had a truck payment.
Like,
I was scared.
Papa's got
death.
money to make.
Yeah, I was scared to death. And I was enthusiastic and I really loved it. And I thought, man, this is going to be great, you know. And then when it started happening, it was like a snowball. And I was like, this is great.
I agree, because the second you start seeing big numbers for a week, like, I don't know how people get addicted to drugs, but like, that is the best drug you could ever take, because it gets you on this high of like, oh my gosh, look at what I just accomplished. Like, look how many good things I can do with this. This is fantastic. And at the same time, like, Stephen and I've had these conversations, and I know you believe this too, but like, our whole purpose is to serve the students.
Yeah. And, I make that comment about the money, but, the students were pumped. I mean, we were having such a great time. I looked at it as like, I got to work out all day.
Yeah.
And like train people's kids on how to like stand straight and do good push-ups and punch straight and do good kicks. And I was just like I am now, enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
No, it's very true, because the more you pour into your students, whatever you need to get back from them, it seems like that's what you get back from them. So if you're like, oh, okay, like you're like, I got a house payment, I got a car payment, you're not projecting that on them, but you're like, man, I made this student, like you said, they have ADD out the wazoo and they can't sit still for 10 seconds. I made this kid stand in one line for 2 minutes. Like, huge accomplishment. Then all that stuff you needed, that financial stuff, it just comes pouring in, because that's the universe paying you back, so to speak.
Right. And a lot of businesses will solve some bullshit question, right?
Yeah.
So they'll, like, Apple will, improve the iPhone by making the camera better, which is like, it's already so good that we can't use it to its full ability, right? You'd have to be a photographer to use it to its full ability, but they're going to make it better. The iPhone 15 will come out, the iPhone 16 will come out, and it'll be just a better. But you're in martial arts, you're really taking real problems, and you're putting them on the forefront of your mind as a professional. And you're addressing these real problems with real people. Mm-hmm. And so you're right. Like, the autistic kid comes in and he can or she cannot operate in, or they struggle with operating in the real world. Like, they struggle going to school. They're nervous. They have anxiety. Their parents are worried like crazy about them because they love them so much. And they look at their little baby, and their baby struggles just, keeping up with other kids on the playground, or, the social interaction. And then you take them into the dojo and you start treating them like real people. Yeah. And then they don't get treated any different in the dojo. Nope. So in school, you've got two different classes of people in school. You've got the kids that won't even talk to them or play with them. They treat them like dirt. And then you've got other teachers that are going out of their way to treat them special. And that's great, but they don't get treated like regular kids. Yeah. Regular kids. Hey, come in here. Hey, what's going on, Tommy? Hey, 10 push-ups. Yeah. Hey, buddy, where's your gi top? Oh, I don't know. Hey, it's your responsibility, bro. Yeah. Next time you don't show up with your gi top, it's 10 push-ups. Hey, let's have some fun. And then it's like, they love it and they eat it up because they've never been treated just normal.
Yeah, I agree. I find, and I know you feel the same way, sometimes the toughest students to deal with, the ones, like with autism or any sort of mental disorder or ADD, the kids that are quote unquote the problem children, those are the ones that you tend to gravitate towards, because you're like, I know I can help them. It's
the biggest opportunity. Yeah. Right. So you look at the biggest opportunity for improvement, and it's like the man or the woman that comes in and they're 50 years old and they're heavy and they want to lose weight. You look at it as like, man, this is a huge opportunity. Like, they've been dealing with this problem for a long time. Mm-hmm. And now they come to you and you get this opportunity to help them solve this problem.
Yes. No.
And at the end of the day, they can punch harder. So, we always kind of overlook that, we overlook the idea that at the end of the day, somebody that comes in and trains for a period of time, at the end of that day, they can punch harder. Now, you could say, well, I don't want to send somebody out in the world that wants to punch somebody. No, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
But if you ever need to use physical violence, there is no substitute.
Exactly.
There is no walking away when you have to use physical violence. You have to use physical violence. And if you've been trained, any training whatsoever, even if you've trained for one day, it's going to help you. If you've trained for 6 months, now you're looking at, it's going to probably help you significantly. If you've trained for 6 years, now you've changed the scenario where now you are actually the one that can actually help someone else. Mm-hmm. So you might be trained enough to inject yourself into a situation to where you can save someone else, where you see violence happening and you might be able to have the confidence, not the punching ability, but the confidence to step up and be, hey, this is wrong. Hey, he's had enough. Hey, she's had enough. Hey, go away.
Yeah.
Hey, stop touching her. Hey, stop touching him.
Yeah.
Get away from, and you just have the confidence because you know if this guy comes after you or this person comes after you, you train. Mm-hmm. Like you've been punched in the face. You got punched in the face Tuesday.
It's like, what are they going to do?
You're not scared of that anymore.
Yeah.
So not having that fear of physical violence, not even being tough. We're not even talking about somebody that's tough or skilled or like mean as hell or something. We're talking about somebody that doesn't fear the physical violence. Having that ability is huge.
Okay, so I got to tell you a story. You know Todd, right? Just tested for his black belt.
Yes.
Yeah, he's going to recertify this coming January.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Todd's a senior in high school, good-looking kid, very strong, crazy work ethic. Yeah. Like he works 30 hours a week.
He looks like the Terminator.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I mean, he's a phenomenal student, like the best one you could ask for. He was telling me a story, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, where he showed up early to work and he's like, oh, I got a half hour. He's like, I'm going to take a nap because he works all the time. So he's in his car taking a nap and all of a sudden he feels his car shaking. He wakes up and he looks outside and there's 3 kids, high school kids, like shaking his car. So he's like, oh, okay. So he gets out of his car. He's like, hey guys, come on, like knock it off. It's like, I'm trying to take a nap. I got to go into work in like 20 minutes. They're like, oh, what are you going to do about it? Blah, blah, blah. Stupid teenage kid stuff. He's like, come on, guys. Like, I'm serious. Like, walk away. So he gets out of his car and he goes in front of the car and he's standing in front of one. And then he notices that the other 2 circle him. And he's like, in his mind, like, oh shit, like it's going to go down. And he goes, I don't know what I said and I don't know how I said it. He goes, but I said something and they looked at me and they walked away.
That's good. That's what I'm talking about. That's an exact example of what we just talked about.
He's all like, I was ready to just like tear these guys apart.
So now think about that. You got this big, huge kid, Todd, and let's say he's just as physically fit without martial arts as he was with martial arts, which it's hard to think that, but let's just pretend. Let's pretend that he did volleyball instead and he's just physically fit. He did, with martial arts, he had the confidence to go out and say what needed to be said and project the confidence to where those 3 kids are like, we don't have any problems.
Exactly.
But let's say that he didn't do that and then it turned into a rumble. There's a high probability that one of those kids, if not Todd, was going to be hurt. Lose an eye, get their teeth knocked out, get their head smashed through the car window. I mean, or nothing happened. But the fact that he was able to go out there, so whatever... Like, let's say that we look at Todd's parents, right? And we say, okay, Todd's parents, you've spent this much money investing in martial arts. You just got paid dividends.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You just got paid all your dividends right there in one day. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I don't know. I don't agree. The unknown is what you just avoided.
He could have gotten seriously hurt. Or he could have seriously hurt somebody else because he didn't know what he was doing.
And these are dipshits.
Control.
These are teenagers,
exactly.
Right?
They're going to do dumb stuff anyways.
Yeah, teenagers. They're operating without any brain cells.
Exactly. Well, they say the mind of a teenager is the same as the mind of a psychopath. So, but, they're not too far off with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty that sounds right.
Yeah. So I was like, when you were talking about that, I was like, oh my God, that is exactly a story that just happened.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to say that, like you said, with enough confidence to know that it's like, all right. Like,
what are you twerps going to do?
Like, what are you going to do that hasn't already been done?
Yeah, I got punched in the face Tuesday. Somebody roundhouse kicked me in the groin Wednesday.
Exactly. And it was just like, he was just like, I don't know what I said or how I said it, but the next thing I know, they left. And he was just all like, wow, that, and then he just carried on with his day.
That's good.
Yeah. And he came in and he almost didn't even want to say it. Like, he was just like, hey, I got to tell you the story. And I was all like, what's up, dude?
Yeah, what's up, man?
And he told me, and I was like, holy crap, man.
That's like taking out the prom queen.
Exactly.
He basically had another experience that was a highlight of his young life.
Oh, my gosh.
Just like dating the prom queen.
Exactly. So, yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, that's like the most fulfilling thing is when you get students, and I know because you've been teaching longer than me and you've helped more people than I have at this point, where it's like when you get those students that come back and they're just like, hey, thank you. Like,
you know, one of the biggest thanks is when you train some kid, right? And I'm thinking about a couple Hispanic girls that I've trained 20 years ago or whatever. And now they're coming back and signing up their kids. Mm-hmm. That's when you know, you're like, you look at them, you give them a big hug, and you tell them you love them, and you're like, man, I miss you. And it's like, that's the biggest thanks anybody could do, is they trained with you as a kid. So they're very intimately aware of what you offer and what your services are and what your program is and how you treat kids. And then they show up with their own kids and they're like, hey, here's my kid. She's 6 now. She needs she needs karate. And you just look at them and you're like, wow, this is like, that's the coolest thing that happens. And it's happened, I don't know. It's happened a handful of times. But every time it happens, man, that is one of the most, that's the special, it's just a special day. Mm-hmm. And every time I see him, it's just a special day.
Yeah. I completely agree. Because so we all know, and we're a little biased on how we know the benefits of martial arts and the importance of it and how much it can offer for people. I'm assuming that's one of the main reasons why we decided, and like you decided, to create TruMotion, is because you saw this great vehicle and you're like, I know I can make this better. So what was your main thought process behind like TruMotion and like rebranding and really just kind of the creation of where we're at now?
I think the biggest thing is when we were operating with United Studios, there was so many distractions for anybody that was a full-time instructor for United Studios, or like me, you're trying to run multiple locations. There was so many distractions that, you start looking at, in my mind, if there's 100 units of energy, 30 of those units are being used on distractions that have nothing to do with martial arts, nothing to do with business, nothing to do with helping other people. And I just thought, what if I was able to get those 30 units back? And of course I'm a father, so I have other obligations, but what if I was able to get those 30 units back that are being wasted? And I was able to really put forth X amount of units into focusing on how do we create a brand where the focus is creating better people, building better people, and, spreading the martial arts. And not just the message of it, but when somebody shows up, you train them, right? That's probably the biggest thing. It was just eliminating the distractions and putting people in position, because now you have, when somebody comes in and trains, and let's say, for instance, they have the dream of being a martial arts instructor. Do you have a program that supports that? Because you help create this dream, right? So some kid comes and trains with you, they look up to you, and you always look up at your sensei. So your sensei's the toughest guy ever. Your sensei whooped your ass for years. Yeah. So you just think that there's nobody better than your sensei. So you look up to this person and you want to emulate them. And then you get to a certain age where this is something you want to do. Are you running a program that supports that? Or are you running a program where you have to constantly suppress that? Because if you can't support it, this person goes and competes against you in the business world, and they open up down the street, and they don't really see it as disrespectful because you weren't offering that.
Yeah.
So I think with TruMotion, it was about making sure that we offer opportunity to the people below us, and then not poison them with some of the stuff that we had been poisoned with. Being part of United Studios for 30 something years, Jeez Louise. Yeah. I don't have to tell you, but that's the Wild West.
Yeah.
And the ultimate guys, I don't think that's any different. I think there's some good guys on both sides of that, right?
I
They're good people.
Yeah.
There's good people out there, and I love a lot of those people. But
those bad apples. That just
there's a couple
spoil.
bad apples that spoil the whole bunch.
Yeah.
And but yeah, are you offering a program where you're representing? Are you practicing what you preach, right? And then as far as like the martial arts, we've been exposed since, I mean, quite frankly, you'd have to give credit where credit is due, UFC, right? So you take the mixed martial arts, UFC fighting, and this is a true space where things are proven to work or proven not to work. So then when this started getting really popular, say 15 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, it was getting really big.
Thank you for listening in today. This concludes part 1 of our 2-part interview with Master Tyler Martin. Join us next week where we will have part 2 for you. Take care. Bye.